So I thought this was going to be a little bit more awkward to get back into, but then I remembered that I talk to myself on a daily basis without a camera in front of my face. So really, what's the difference? Hi guys, long time no see. So I don't want to get too much into why I've been gone, but if you didn't know, I have recently moved from California to Seattle, Washington, and settling in took a lot longer than I anticipated, but I'm back now. We have a new setup, we have my new place, it's all ready. I'm so excited to be filming again and to talk to you guys about books. So many of you reached out to me while I was on this little hiatus asking if I was going to come back, when I was going to come back, and it was really heartwarming to see you guys miss my dumb opinions about books. And I'm just so genuinely excited to be back. So I thought, what better video to start off with than my top 5 best and worst books of 2021 so far. 2021 has definitely been an interesting reading year for me. I have been DNFing a lot more than I usually do, so I don't really have a ton of worst books so far because I'm usually just DNFing them before I even finish them, so I don't want to include those here. So a lot of the worst books I have on this list are kind of like 3-star reads, so just pretty average. I know it's not as fun as hearing me rant about books that I absolutely hate, but at least it's something. First book I'm going to talk about today is Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch. This is the second book in the Gentleman Bastard series, the first being Lies of Locke Lamora, which follows Locke Lamora, and he is kind of this legendary thief, and him and his band of gentleman bastards basically steal from the super rich in order to appease their god of thievery. So it's really fun. The first book was one of my favorite books of, was it 2020 or 2019? I think 2019. This is honestly one of my favorite fantasy series, even though I didn't really like the second book so much. It really felt like that Scott Lynch was trying really hard to top Lies of Locke Lamora in absurdities and like extraordinary acts that Jean and Locke had to go through, and all of these schemes that they had to successfully accomplish, that I feel like it got a little too muddy, and none of the plot points and the schemes that they had to complete felt as fleshed out as I wanted them to be. There were about 4 plots in this book, and honestly I feel like if the first like 30% of this book didn't exist, I would have liked it better, because the first 30% really doesn't matter much in the end, and I think it definitely could have cut down the book, or even not just cut it down, but just left more room for Scott Lynch to perfect the other plot points that he had going on. I was just left constantly wondering how these two were gonna pull it off, and they did pull it off, but it wasn't as satisfying as Lies of Locke Lamora was, because the pieces didn't align as nicely as I wanted them to, if that makes sense. Overall, this book was just a little too ambitious, and Lady Pirates wasn't even enough to save it for me, so that's criminal in and of itself. The next book I'm going to talk about is, I believe, the lowest rated book I've read this year so far, and that is Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. This was just so incredibly mediocre. It's following these 2 girls. One of them is a witch who has been outcasted by her community, and the other is this amplifier who, she's not a witch, but she amplifies witchcraft and magic, and so they team up together in order to stop this like big bad villain who is creating death and sickness and blah 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 bad things happening in the countryside. This simply had zero flavor to it. It was so bland. It was very much just stereotypical YA fantasy, no depth to it. Ren, one of our main characters, was so incredibly annoying to me. I have a really hard time connecting to like goody characters. I just don't vibe with them. I find them incredibly annoying. Like, what do you mean you have morality? Also, the villain was such a caricature of a villain. Their motivations were spotty at best and uninteresting at worst. It brought nothing to the table. I will say I think the world was maybe the most interesting thing about this book, but even then it really did not do anything for me. And it also just simply wasn't gay enough. So what was I reading this book for? So this next book I have to talk about, I feel so bad about because I can already see Monty regretting asking me to come back because I'm going to trash this book. No, I'm not gonna trash it. This actually is very much a me thing, not a book thing, and that is Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. Oh my god, was this so incredibly sad? I really do not like sad books. I don't like to feel sadness when I read something. And this was just not even sad in like a melancholic way. It was just uncomfortable and raw and realistic and too close to real life, where I simply just revoked it. This book basically follows two super dysfunctional sisters as one steals the identity of the other in order to use their health insurance because they recently discovered that they have cancer, and is basically following them coming to terms with their unhealthy sisterly relationship and their own unhealthy behaviors, and it's overall just a super raw look into themselves and them together. It's not a bad book. I love Mary H.K. Choi. I love their writing. Emergency Contact still is probably number one, if not top 3 favorite contemporaries of all time. This was just a really heavy book to read about. If you have any sort of triggers when it comes to disordered eating, especially, wow, this book goes into that and does not hold back in the slightest. I just could not handle it myself. And for that reason, it just wasn't an enjoyable experience for me. I also just could not find myself connecting to our two main characters. I just really didn't understand their dynamic, and I didn't feel like we got enough background or insight into why they were so distant with each other and why they were so toxic. I think a big part of this book is just because it's singular POV. I feel like if it was dual perspective, I would be able to enjoy it a lot more, so I could get both sisters' look into the relationship. For me, it kind of hindered my experience. So if you're looking for a hard-hitting contemporary, I definitely do recommend this. It's just I personally do not really enjoy hard-hitting contemporaries. The next book I'm going to talk about is actually the last one on my worst reads of the year. I know it's only 4, but like I said, I genuinely just did not have a whole lot to work with here. But it's going to be A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I rated this 3 stars, so again, it's definitely not like a worst book or even, I would say, a bad book in my rating scale at all. But again, out of the 31 books I've read this year so far, it has fallen onto this list. And that is mainly because of Naomi Novik's writing style. I really liked this world. I really liked the magic. I really loved the description of these monsters who are just trying to eat these students the entire time they're at this freaking magical school. I love the concept of this book. I just don't like Naomi Novik's writing style. She is a huge info dumper, and I am not entirely opposed to info dumps. They usually do not bother me much. I am a big sucker for world building, so any amount of information that you can give me about your world, however you need to give it to me, I'm okay with. But it did take me out of the story because I wasn't able to sit with this information that she was giving us. She just threw so much information at you at a time that you really couldn't appreciate the impact or what this meant for the world and the story before you got another paragraph upon paragraph describing another thing. But I did really like the main character. She was very snarky, she was very independent. I love those main characters, and she had a himbo boyfriend. It was very, very cute. I am definitely willing to try out the sequel to this series. I don't know how many books are going to be in this series, but I'm definitely probably going to pick it up on audio because I do remember really liking the audiobook for this one as well. It was a great concept, not so great execution for me. Now that we have that out of the way, we can talk about my best books of the year so far. I'm actually going to start with an honorable mention, and that is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a pre-Columbian inspired fantasy that follows this man who is about to be the sacrifice and the vessel for this crow god, and we're following him and his journey to the holy site that this sacrifice is going to occur. And we follow him, we follow this lady bisexual pirate, and we also follow a priestess at the holy site that he's traveling to. So we get these different perspectives and timelines leading up to the cataclysmic event. The chemistry between Ziala and Zarapio, off the charts. The honey scene in this book, forever drilled into my brain. Such an interesting fantasy world, so fun, so fresh, so unique. Rebecca Roanhorse does such great characters, and world building is phenomenal. If you have not picked up this book and you're a big fantasy reader, you are missing out. So remember when I used to read fantasy? I'm not that girl anymore. The rest of these books are not fantasy. They are all contemporary romances. I don't know who I am. I don't know who I think I am, but apparently I'm in my rom-com era. I clearly just cannot get enough of cheesy, sexy romances. And the first one I have to talk about is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This was such a surprise for me, okay? I did not like beach read. It just was not as fun as I wanted it to be, but I heard so many people raving about this book, so I was like, alright, I'll give it a chance. I'm not a huge friends to lovers person, but who knows, maybe it'll surprise me. Oh my god, did this surprise me. We are basically following Poppy and Alex and their friends to lovers romance as they go on all of these summer vacations together throughout the years, and you get flashbacks to when they first started being friends and after some event that happens where they stop talking after a while, and then to present day after I think it's been a year since that event that you come to realize what it is, and their last attempt to kind of rekindle their friendship moment together. This book was glorious and beautiful and so fun. I literally read this in one day. I could not put it down. It was sexy, it was heartwarming, it pulled at my heartstrings, it made me so happy, it made me so giggly. I loved every moment of this. Poppy and Alex have such good chemistry, they have such good banter, which is one of the only reasons I really did enjoy Beach Read, was because of the banter. Emily Henry was just able to keep that banter going with this lighthearted summer read, and I just was obsessed. I initially gave this book 4 stars, maybe 4.5, but I really haven't stopped thinking about it, and it's definitely a 5-star read for me. It was just so fun, and I highly recommend this for anybody looking for a quick summer, lighthearted, fun, amazing, beautiful, lovely, glorious book. Okay? Was that enough adjectives for you? Next book I'm going to talk about, I'm sure nobody's really surprised that it's on here because, wow, I love this author with every fiber of my being, and that is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I actually don't know what the community's opinions of this book is. I know it was a really highly anticipated release, of course, after Red, White, Royal Blue, but I haven't really seen that many reviews, I don't think, about this book, but I absolutely loved it. It's basically following August as she moves to New York City and gets in this time warp romance with this butch lesbian from the 60s or the 70s, and it's kind of slightly magical but still has that rom-com-y feel to it. I just adored this book so much. The found family aspect of this, Casey just does queer friend groups so well. It is so nice to read about and so fun to read about because I see so much of myself in these characters and their humor and their interactions with each other. I also feel like I just read this at a really great time because August kind of goes through this like late 20s, don't know what I'm doing with my life journey through this book, and I really related to a lot of the things that she was talking about and the struggles and kind of the uncertainties about life that she had. She definitely does have her moments where she was a bit annoying to read about, but in the end I really liked her journey that she goes through in this book, and I really appreciated her unlikable sides to her personality. This also simply has the best women loving women sex scenes that I've ever read about, and it was incredible, and it was on a dirty subway. Have no idea how they were able to pull that off and make that sexy, but they did. Speaking of an absolute deity of the English language, Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. Let me tell you about Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This is hands down top 3 most beautiful books I have ever read. Not just in this year, not just the year of 2021, of all time. I was completely and utterly blown away by the writing in this book because it is absolutely just dripping with honey and golden deliciousness in every single page. This is following our main character Grace, and kind of similarly to August in One Last Stop, she is kind of going through this like late 20s crisis where she doesn't really know what she's doing with her life. She feels like she hasn't been living her life. She has accomplished all of her goals and now she just doesn't know what to do next, and she kind of feels like she hasn't really lived her life yet until she spontaneously marries this girl in Vegas, and she is trying to find her. This is absolutely not only one of the most beautiful books I've ever read, but the most impactful books and relatable books that I've ever read. The struggles that Grace goes through in this book, where she feels like she's wasted her life, she hasn't lived, she has just been so focused on her goals and the future that she has not been living in the present. Wow, do I relate to that so much. There were multiple moments in this book where I almost cried, and I absolutely never cry in books. It hit me so deeply. The romance in here is so beautiful, but even more so than that, Grace's journey in this book is so nice to read about, and I rooted for her the entire time. I just wanted to give her a hug. I love Grace Porter with my entire soul, and I will protect her with my life. I will. Next book I have to talk about, another freaking romance, guys. It's almost, not quite, but almost like I Have a Heart. Not quite though. At Your Age by Eve Brown, Talia Hibbert. The things that this woman...
Oh no, I hope I don't fall.
Not me catching myself thirsting for an author on my comeback video. Heather, go touch some grass, I'm begging you. Talia Hibbert simply understands romance. I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, you can link Wikipedia articles below, but I truly don't think that the romance genre existed before Talia Hibbert picked up a pen and started writing. I genuinely don't think that it existed before her, because the things that she is able to make me feel for fictional characters and their pretend made up relationship, it needs to be studied. It needs to be in history books and it needs to be analyzed, because wow, I don't understand how she continues to top herself every single time. But here she has done it, folks. This is following Eve Brown, who is the youngest in the Brown sisters trilogy. This is the last book in that trilogy, and she's definitely like the baby of the sisters. She doesn't really have, I don't want to say she doesn't have ambition, but every project she kind of goes into falls flat and doesn't really work out for her. So she's kind of given up. She doesn't really want to put much effort into anything anymore. But her parents are basically like, you need to get a job or we're going to cut you off. So she ends up working at this bed and breakfast, and she strikes up this romance with the bed and breakfast owner, and holy shit, the smut in this book. I could blush on camera right here and now, no regrets. Wow, it was so delicious. I still do think that Dani Brown is my favorite in the series, but this has the best smut in the series, hands down. A reread is imminent because I need to get back into this romance trilogy. There is nothing bad I can say about this book or the trilogy as a whole. It's absolutely amazing, incredible, 10 out of 10, 5 stars, need to pick it up. If you have not read these books yet, simply what are you doing and why are you torturing yourself at this point? It is masochism. Do better for yourself, love yourself, and pick this book up. And the last book I'm going to talk about is She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. This is like an enemies to lovers, fake dating, basketball player cheerleader romance. If you did not just get excited and place a hold on your library for this book or bought it immediately after me saying that, I don't know what hope there is for you. This is just good old, just teenage rom-com goodness, okay? This is a YA contemporary romance, which I don't find myself reading a whole lot of YA romance because it lacks a certain spice, if you will, that I very much like to read in my stories. And although I still wish that there was spice, and I do wish that this was set in college so we could get that, I loved this book so much. There were so many points in this book where I just couldn't stop smiling. It was just so heartwarming and fun and gay, and I loved Irene. She was such a bad bitch in this book. There is so much actual discussions about how you should be treated by somebody that supposedly loves you or cares about you in all avenues, both in friendships, family relationships, and obviously in romantic partners. Every single toxic behavior in this book is checked, it is called out, and the character makes efforts to actively change that behavior. It's just so nice and refreshing to read that in a young adult novel, and I really appreciated it. And like I said, this is just so freaking cute, man. I loved every minute of this book. Again, I'm pretty sure I finished it all in one day. It was so fun, so gay. I loved it. I loved this book. Alright guys, so that is all the books I have to talk about with you today. Definitely, please let me know your top 5, top worst, any books that you need to tell me about. I want to hear about them because it's been too long since I've been away from you guys, and I just want to talk to you guys about books again. So please any book you want to tell me about, let me know. Also, let me know if there are any particular videos that you want to see from me now that I'm back. I was contemplating doing my best books of 2020, but I know that's probably a little too late for that. If you did still want to see that, let me know. I might consider doing it. But thank you guys so much for sticking around with me. If you're still here, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm so happy to be back, and I cannot wait to see you guys again for another video. Bye!